Hello and welcome to Tuesdays with Thomas. I'm Thomas Douglas, the Artistic Director of the Bach Choir of Pittsburgh. So glad to have you here today. Here in my sort of makeshift studio office during the pandemic, with my weight bench in the background and my tattoos showing. You know, we're all multifaceted people with all different parts of our personality. Little Mozart playing in the background. I don't know if you recognize it, but it's Clemenza di Tito, one of his final operas. All to make the point that we are multifaceted people, as I said, and it takes a tribe, it takes a whole community to make this world. So today we're going to be introduced to another member of our community, Jon Erik Schreiber. He's the associate conductor of the Bach Choir of Pittsburgh. And he's going to be speaking with you about things that are important to him. We're going to listen to a little music and we'll talk a little bit later. So glad you're here. Just sit back and enjoy. So we're so happy to have Jon Erik Schreiber here. He's the associate conductor of the Bach Choir of Pittsburgh, and we're just glad that you wanted to spend a couple minutes with me to just talk about a couple things.
Thanks, Thomas. I'm glad to be here, and we miss you.
Miss you too. Hey, tell me about your experience with the Bach Choir. When did you come on board? When did you join? How long have you been with the group?
I forget exactly when, but it's at least 11 years, maybe 12. My recollection is that I came 2 years after you did, and you had, I forget the baritone's name, who was your assistant for a couple of years.
Was that Thomas Octave?
Thomas, of course, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And then after he moved on, I was trying to fill those very large shoes.
Well, you've done a fabulous job. I mean, I really couldn't do it without you, to be honest.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's a highlight for me.
So tell me about your training, though. Where did you do your training?
So I got a bachelor's degree in music at Pitt, and I studied voice there with Claudia Pinza.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got my bachelor's, I found out that CMU had a teacher certification program. So I spent 1 year in the classroom at CMU and 1 semester doing my student teaching. And got my teaching certification there.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
I taught for about 10 years in South Carolina and Ohio. Did some graduate work in Kent State, Ohio, and then made my way back to Pittsburgh, which is both my wife and my hometown.
Oh, excellent. So you've had a lot of experience with music. Are you involved in a church music now also?
No, I have been a church music director on and off. I've done that for about 10 years in various places. But most recently I was singing in the choir at East Liberty Presbyterian as just a core member.
Yeah.
It's a really nice church. I believe in a lot of what they stand for, and the music program is pretty solid. So that was a pleasure. But now that I've been teaching, starting at 7 a.m. every day, I can't keep doing it. So I had to cut back my schedule. So no church work right now, just Bach choir and my day job.
Right, exactly. So how has the COVID-19 virus, how has that affected your work?
Well, we had about 3 weeks where we were just told to do nothing and stay home and don't worry about anything. We're going to get a plan in place. And then the last 8 weeks, we've been trying to figure out how to communicate with kids, how to get them involved, how to make them appreciate that they're still learning that they can do, even though they're not sitting in a desk.
Right.
And I think we've had mixed results.
Okay. Yeah, same with me too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems like you've worked with a lot of different people and a lot of different groups and different levels of accomplishment. So what would you say about a chorister's vocal technique as they go from an amateur to to a professional? What would
Right.
you say about that?
Well, the amateurs are a lot easier than the professionals sometimes. I find amateurs who join a choir as adults, they want to learn how to do it. They're eager to find out some tricks, how to manage their instrument.
Yeah.
But for anybody that's studied, it's going to take you a few years to gain any real control over it. It's not like a trumpet where you can just put it in your mouth and blow and you'll get something.
Yeah.
You really have to learn how to manage your instrument. So I find beginners are really open to ideas, but it's really hard to teach them anything that they can get their hands wrapped around.
Right.
The ideas are elusive. We've all heard phrases like "sing from your diaphragm," which doesn't really mean a lot,
Right.
especially to a novice.
Yeah, there's no vocal cords there, really.
There's no vocal cords there.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So do you keep a private studio also?
Again, I scaled back on that.
Okay.
Well, I was a stay-at-home dad for about 10 years, and that was a highlight for me.
Wow.
I love teaching privately. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I find, beginners can get a lot of bang for their buck if they learn how to manage their embouchure, learn how to get the lips to obey you, learn how to make the tongue settle down.
Yeah.
You can get a really rich sound pretty quickly. But learning things like support and, how to manage the stuff inside your throat, that's a lot harder, a lot more nuanced.
Right. Do you think it's important to have a good sense of your own anatomy?
I do, because we can't reach and touch those things like you can the piano keyboard.
Right.
So unless you can visualize it, unless you can try to picture how the muscles overlap, then I think you're guessing.
Right. Well, obviously, from the successes that you've had personally and with other groups, you know what you're talking about.
Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah.
I like it. It's a puzzle, the way the body works. It's a real miracle. I see that, and it's a mystery to try to unpack it for myself and for students.
Yeah.
It's a real fun to try to explore that.
Well, tell us about the piece that you brought along today.
Okay, so I brought a piece that I had worked at Alderdice with my chamber choir. They're a pretty talented group. The piece is called El Hambo, and the composer is Finnish, and we think his name would be pronounced Jaakko Mantijärvi. That's my best Finnish impression.
Sounds good to me.
Yes. The text means nothing. It appears to be nonsense in a Finnish style. In fact, the directions are with a jolly Scandinavian smile. The beginning of the song starts with the sounds of string instruments tuning up, and then you get into this dance tune. And apparently the hambo is an important Finnish dance, and apparently this piece is kind of making fun of that idea, being called the hambo, like it's the most amazing hambo you've ever heard before.
Excellent. Well, let's just take a moment and listen to it. So everyone, let's listen to El Hambo. Well, that was just great. We
I
enjoyed it
love that.
very much. It was a fun piece.
Fantastic.
And you've performed it with your group, yes?
No, that's the saddest part. We had spent about 4 weeks on it. We were starting to get it under our belts, and then we all had to go home. So
Right.
we haven't finished rehearsing.
So you can use it for something upcoming
Yeah, it'll have to be another season, another year.
season. Well,
Yeah.
Jon Erik Schreiber, I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. We really appreciate what you have to say, and I personally appreciate your work so much.
Thank you, Thomas. It's really a privilege to work with you. I still learn stuff from you every week.
Um,
Some of it is funny jokes, but I do learn a lot from you.
well, that's
And
nice of you to say. So we'll get back to being together as soon as we can. We don't know when that's going to be because of all of the restrictions that are happening because of the virus.
Indeed, but I look forward to it.
Me too. Take care.
Thank you, Thomas. Good night.
So our question today comes from Cassidy in Shadyside. She says, I understand that you like to cook. What are some of your best recipes? Well, Cassidy and everybody, I seem to like whatever I'm cooking at that time. Right now I was just preparing some eggplant parmesan. But what I did was instead of red sauce, I used a pesto with the fresh mozzarella. So, you take the eggplant, you can skin part of it, you douse it in some flour and then some egg wash, and then fry it until it gets a little bit brown on each side. And then once it cools off, you just make layers with the eggplant and the fresh mozzarella and the pesto. Yum. Well, thanks for being with us today. We're always pleased to have you. And stay tuned for the next adventure next week. Thanks for coming to Tuesdays with Thomas. Have a good week.